Hello viewers, welcome to my YouTube channel. Get ready for heart-touching stories. Don't forget to subscribe and let's begin.
The morning I walked into Hartwell and Associates, I was wearing my old beige cardigan, the one with the loose button on the left cuff that my daughter Alina had been threatening to throw away for years. I had my reading glasses hanging around my neck on a plain cord, my hair silver and neatly combed, and I carried a canvas tote bag from the farmer's market instead of a briefcase. I looked exactly like what most people assume a 67-year-old retired woman looks like. Harmless, slightly out of place and easily dismissed. That was not my intention. I simply hadn't thought much about what I was wearing. I had more important things on my mind. I had come to the firm because Alina had mentioned in passing that her husband Marcus had been making some aggressive investment decisions lately. Decisions that involved her inheritance from my late husband, Robert. Robert had worked for 40 years to build what he left behind. It wasn't a fortune by Wall Street standards, but it was enough to matter, enough that I wanted to understand exactly what was being done with it. Alina trusted Marcus completely. I loved my daughter for that openness, that willingness to believe the best in the man she had married. But I was her mother, and mothers notice things. The receptionist at Hartwell and Associates was polite in that carefully trained way, warm on the surface, efficient underneath. She told me that Marcus Bellingham was with a client and that I was welcome to wait. I sat in one of the cream-colored chairs near the window and looked out at the city below, watching taxis and pedestrians move through the morning like pieces on a board. I had been waiting about 20 minutes when Marcus walked through the glass doors. He saw me immediately. I watched his face go through several expressions in the space of about 2 seconds: surprise, irritation, and then something he quickly rearranged into a tight, professional smile. Patricia. He said my name the way some people say the word unexpected. I didn't know you were coming in today. I should have called ahead, I said pleasantly. I hope you have a few minutes. He glanced at his watch. I have a conference call in 45 minutes. What's this about? The Meridian portfolio, I said. The reallocation you made last month. Something shifted behind his eyes. That's a sound strategy, Patricia. I've explained this to Alina. I'd like you to explain it to me. He paused, and in that pause I saw the calculation happening. Marcus was 39 years old, handsome in a sharp-featured way, and possessed of the particular confidence that comes from never having been seriously wrong about anything yet. He had joined Hartwell and Associates 8 years ago and had risen steadily. He was good at his job. I had never disputed that. What he was not good at was remembering that other people had histories he knew nothing about. Come on back, he said finally. His office was on the 14th floor, glass-walled, with a view that commanded attention. He had framed credentials on the wall, a whiteboard covered in notations, and a desk that was aggressively neat. He gestured me toward a chair across from him and sat down with the air of a man preparing to explain something to someone who would not fully understand it. Meridian reallocation was a strategic pivot, he began. Given the current interest rate environment and the volatility you moved 60% of a conservative widow's inheritance into leveraged ETFs, I said. He blinked. They're hedged with instruments that perform inversely to the positions themselves, which creates a drag on returns in a sideways market and compounds the losses in a downturn. The hedge doesn't protect the principal, Marcus, it just slows the bleeding. Silence that followed was the particular kind that fills a room after something unexpected has been said. Patricia, he said, recovering, I appreciate that you're concerned, but this is a nuanced area of portfolio management. I've been doing this for, I know how long you've been doing this. I kept my voice gentle. I wasn't angry, I was precise. I also know that the underlying index for two of those ETFs has a negative correlation to the sector you're overweight in. If that sector corrects, and there are 3 indicators suggesting it will within the next 2 quarters, Alina's inheritance loses between 30 and 40% of its current value before the hedge activates. Marcus stared at me. Where are you getting this? He asked. His voice had changed. The patient, instructive tone was gone. Something more guarded had taken its place. I read, I said simply. He sat back in his chair. I could see him trying to recalibrate, trying to decide how much weight to give what I had just said, and I watched him make the wrong decision. Look, he said, and his voice carried the faint, unmistakable edge of condescension. I understand you want to feel involved. Alina worries about you, and I think this comes from a good place. But you're talking about a cardigan and a farmer's market bag walking in here and telling me how to do my job. He smiled. It was not a kind smile. Why don't I have the receptionist make you a coffee and you can wait while I finish my morning, and then we'll all have lunch and I'll walk you through the basics in terms that are easier to. He stopped. He stopped because the door to his office had opened. The man who walked in was in his mid-60s, silver-haired, wearing a charcoal suit that had been made for him specifically. He had the kind of face that belongs to someone who has spent decades reading rooms and people, and he was reading this one now with focused attention. This was Gerald Hartwell. The Hartwell of Hartwell and Associates. Marcus, he said, and then he looked at me, and his entire expression changed, not in a small way, in the way that a landscape changes when the clouds move off the sun. Patricia Voss, he said. He said it the way you say a name you haven't spoken aloud in a long time but have thought about often. I saw your name on the visitor log and I thought I had to be misreading it. I stood up and shook his hand. Gerald, it's been a long time, 20 years at least. He was still looking at me with that expression, something between admiration and residual awe that I had never quite got used to, even when I was at the height of my career. You look exactly the same. I look 67, I said. But thank you. Marcus had gone very still in his chair. Gerald turned to him and the warmth in his expression became something more measured. Marcus, do you know who you've been speaking with? Marcus opened his mouth and closed it again. Patricia Voss, Gerald said, spent 22 years as the chief investment officer of Dunmore Capital. Before that, she was the youngest person ever to make partner at Stern and Whitebridge. He paused. She also wrote the paper on leveraged ETF drag that is still required reading in 3 graduate finance programs, including the one you attended. Room was very quiet. I did not look at Marcus. I found in that moment that I had no desire to see his face. There was no satisfaction in it for me, or less than I might have expected. What I felt mostly was tired of the whole performance, tired of the cardigan being a costume that meant something. Tired of the reading glasses being a prop that communicated diminishment. Tired of silver hair being a signal that the person inside it had stopped thinking. Position he built in the Meridian portfolio concerns me, I said to Gerald, keeping my voice professional and even. I can walk you through my analysis if you have time. I'm not here to cause problems. I'm here because it's my daughter's money. Gerald nodded slowly. He pulled out the chair beside me and sat down. I have time, he said. Marcus, do you want to pull up the portfolio? We spent 2 hours in that office. Gerald asked questions. Marcus answered them in a voice that grew increasingly quiet. I laid out what I had seen in the numbers, not to humiliate anyone, but because the money was real and the risk was real, and those things mattered more than anyone's pride, including my own. By the end of it, Gerald had agreed that the position needed to be restructured. He was professional about it, careful not to make it a confrontation. Marcus was given a clear set of directives and the meeting was closed with the clean, clipped efficiency of people who work in high-stakes environments. As Gerald walked me to the elevator, he shook his head slowly. You could have called me directly, I would have sorted it. I know, I said, but I wanted to see it for myself, he smiled. Still the same Patricia. Elevator arrived. I stepped in and turned around. Marcus was standing in the hallway watching. He looked younger than he had when I'd arrived. Not in a good way, in the way that people look when something they believed about themselves has been quietly revised. I met his eyes for a moment. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The doors closed. Elena called me that evening after Marcus had come home. She said, and I could hear the complicated mixture of emotions in that single syllable: embarrassment, gratitude, loyalty to her husband, love for me. You could have just told me. I know, sweetheart. He's not a bad person. I know that too. Just, she paused. He underestimated you. People do, I said. It stopped bothering me a long time ago. There was a silence on the line and then she laughed, a short, real laugh that sounded like the girl she used to be. The cardigan mom. You walked in wearing the cardigan. It's a comfortable cardigan. It has a loose button. It has character, I said. She laughed again, longer this time, and I laughed with her, and somewhere in that laughter was everything that didn't need to be said. That competence doesn't announce itself, that wisdom accumulates quietly, and that the most dangerous person in any room is often the one everyone has already decided not to worry about. I never did throw away that cardigan.